I'll cover the highlights of the session today is, of course, the M word Amit has already taken. I'll talk about how that M word still centered around XR, where the content is playing the big role. What are the challenges, the biggest challenges in adoption? Because this metaverse or XR so-called, they are not new. They were there. Like we are now going ahead with the term which is coined 30 years ago from now. So we'll talk about how AI can assist us and what is the need and ask on the content side. So before getting into further, let's play a video, please.
If you're traveling beyond this life, where the weight of tradition cannot follow, do not fear reinvention. The design is your liberation. Between the planes where our dreams are built, where the mind reigns and the light bends, and the children of creation dance in time. If you're traveling beyond this life, you are not alone. We are waiting.
This video is from a game called Second Life. This is what everyone is talking today. We want our imagination, we want to live in the second life. Probably looks like we get bored of the current life which we have. But anyway, the metaverse is trying to take us there. So this is what, there are so many definitions of metaverse. But this is what we define metaverse. It is kind of more connected world where all of our data get connected and the reality between physical and virtual will blur in that world. Our photorealistic avatars will be taking our place. Probably, I've been talking to one of the innovators recently in our booth. They're talking about metaversity or university where you'll join in virtually in metaverse kind of thing. We might be having our own virtual identity, not just that, the whole property definition, IP definition will be changing. Probably buying a virtual copy of a car will be more costlier than buying a car. So that's how the definition of IP will be changing. Probably we'll have virtual society, virtual family, virtual friends. We might already be having some. On Facebook, we have thousands of friends. All virtual, looks like everyone is so happy. I am the only person who is stuck here. But that's kind of metaverse kind of thing is already there some. And then, of course, there will be another characteristic of there will be virtual currencies to survive in that environment. You'll just get ready for the join to metaverse and then stay there and then leave out at 5 o'clock. That's it. Not going anywhere. This is the kind of space we are talking. So that's little future, what I just talked about. What is metaverse today? What I see is metaverse is evolution of some technologies at this stage. And that is enabling or adoption of metaverse. The evolutions in technology like IoT, blockchain, 5G, 6G, cloud-based, especially edge cloud, where you can transfer all of your computation there. AI, of course, everywhere. And at the center stage, if you see, extended reality. Why it is a center stage? Because we are all talking about changing the reality. Means changing the belief. So before getting into, that's where the center stage is still XR. There are different type of XR. You can experience some of them at our booth. Uh, One of them is like AR, where people are talking about augmented reality, where we are augmenting the digital content on top of the real world environment so that it feels like it is connected. The digital content is connected to the real world environment. We get more out of the real world. That's where augmented reality use cases are. VR is where the devices like this, you wear it, you don't see the real world. The whole of the content in this, even the whole environment is virtually generated, computer generated environment. And you program digital content in that virtual environment. So that's what VR is. MR is mix of both the world, where the devices are little smart, like this one. These devices knows how far I am moving in which direction, how far the front wall is, what all these lighting conditions are, everything this device can understand. There are a lot of sensors in these devices. This is, by the way, Lenovo Think Reality devices. That's MR. Primarily, the word MR is coined by Microsoft. There are a lot of devices from their side. Another thing is, yes, mobile XR. When XR comes, everyone feels like, yeah, smart glasses and some JG kind of devices will be playing XR, but it's not true. XR is your simple phone. Today's most of the phone does support XR. And it might be possible 50% of us knows that their phone does support XR, but they even have not tried any XR application on your phone yet. That's the data we have collected recently. So mobile XR is one, your headset that does support mobile tablet-based interface that can be mobile XR. Web XR is another popular thing coming up. We can design XR application just in our favorite JavaScript libraries. There are a number of JavaScript libraries. You always don't need these kind of devices to build XR. And again, XR is like heads-up displays. Simulators, aircraft simulators, trainings, those were there. HUDs, heads-up displays in car. There are 10,000 rupees devices available in India also. You can buy and put HUD in our car. It can project in our car windshield. And those are projection-based, but XR is not limited to these. Wherever camera comes in, CCTV, there is XR is possible. You can project anything. You can modify the reality what you see. Smart glasses, smart mirrors is another example. Lot of gym are placing smart mirrors. Personal trainers, you just have smart mirror and the trainer is guiding you all the thing. What exercise you are doing, wrong exercise, everything, those body tracking and camera is there. There are even fashion side, lot of retail use case, what type of dress will fit to me, smart mirrors are there. So these all are different XR examples. Again, when we say XR, we see this thing. Every few months there is a new device coming in market. We are working with this device. This is second version of this device we are working. So every 6 months it's like, and we have continuation plan for this device. So advancements are coming, lot of things are getting added. So where adoptions are happening? You see this use case? What is this? Lens card. Yeah. Katrina Kaif. Yeah. So this is lens card use case. And this is there from so many years now. This is also XR. You have a digital copy of your glasses. You are trying that digital copy on your face. This is also changing the reality. Recently, I launched this book with the author on Metaverse. We created a digital copy of it. Everyone knows digital copy, PDF copy, everyone knows. Digital means 3D model of this book. that we created, launched in Metaverse. People can touch it, can turn the pages, can really touch the book, and things like that they were doing. So I written a few forward for this book. So author invited me to launch. So that's where there are a number of use cases. We have our booth, a lot of experiments we have done from last couple of years. You can see a few of them there. What is common out of this? We are talking about different type of content. 3D models, I just talked about a book, digital copy of book, get there, audio information, textual information, any metadata related to us, 360-degree videos out there on YouTube. You can search just YouTube VR videos. There are a lot of things you can directly, a lot of content is already available. So biggest part of adoption is this content. How to make this content possible to run in XR. These are the possible typical phases of a content flow is. First is generation. There are biggest challenge in content generation in most of the services or clients we work with. Generally, the content generation is a different department. The design we talked about in the video you have seen, design is liberation. It doesn't stop, it should not stop at there. Actually, this is the biggest part. Content generation happened at different department. The kind of content we are talking about in industry is CAD/CAM design, for example, for any product. And the content which is generated, that's not shareable across the other departments. IT department in many industry looks like a support department. The data is not being shared. Even if it is being shared, there are a lot of different type of data, and the data is not available for better consumption in the device like consumption state I am talking about. These devices can't really run CAD model. They have their own limitation. Unless I am really running with the high power PC, then only I can run real photorealistic thing. Managing that content is another challenge. Who will access what type of data? How to maintain versioning? We have not been able to solve yet the version management of normal byte data, but here we are talking about this room scale. Or when I say data in this room, there are so many things in this room. Each chair is a data. When you change clothing of that chair, then it becomes a new model. How to maintain all this versioning? It's really a hard problem. Publishing data is a problem. How to publish, what protocol I should really provide to access their data quickly in the use cases I need. The traditional HTTP protocol or streaming protocol, WebRTC and stuff, it's all failing at the scale what we need. What Metaverse is asking, that scale, it is all failing. Consumption side, yes, I talked about all these devices today we are talking about. If we bring more computation here, they become heavy. We have reached from a 500-gram device to this 120 gram device, but still it looks heavy to my nose. It is still not that. It need to be either at this scale or at the contract lens level. There are companies working in that direction. So, but to reach there on consumption, there is a lot of things still need to be done. I request Raju here to take us few of the typical flow where we have solved part of it, not fully. Raju, over to you.
Thanks, Kuldeep. Thanks for that awesome intro on XR and XR content. What we are going to, what you are seeing in this slide is the scenario today. How do we produce content and how do we consume it for the devices? So this is the typical workflow that exists in the industry as of now. Okay, and this particular typical flow has lot of challenges, as Kuldeep indicated. When it comes to consuming the same in for the XR devices. this flow is so manual. There are a lot of human elements and manual intervention needed that we'll just go through how does the industry work on this. So first part is the content generation part, which can be done in several ways. One is that you can put a content modeler and use a software like 3D Studio or Maya to produce the 3D content. Then there are scanners, costly laser scanners available in the market like Matterport, Leica. They all have these fancy scanners. You put the scanner at the middle of the place, it will start scanning the environment and produce the model for you. And then there are marketplaces where the indies produce the models and post them there. You can purchase models and use them. Then comes the optimization part. So here in the content generation part, as Kuldeep rightly mentioned, the processing of the XR devices are very limited, and the data that we are going to feed in, right, it has to be limited. When it comes to 3D data, right, the constructions of 3D data, the bottommost unit is something we called as point, which is defined by three dimensions, X, Y, and Z. And then we have something called a point cloud, okay, which is formed by hundreds or thousands of points. Then we mesh them using triangulation or some mesh generation algorithm to make that as a model, right? So the content generation part can produce models, and even the models that exist in the industry today, they are actually produced to for the manufacturing needs or the rendering needs, which has millions and millions of points and polygons, which cannot be directly consumed by the device. So we take it to an optimization step where we reduce them. Again, this involves manual process. There are several softwares available in the market like MeshLab and others. We use them to reduce the content and then slice them, and there is a process called the level of detail. We generate a lot. And then comes the animation part, as Kuldeep was playing the video, right? The second life. Okay, you will feel the second life only when the virtual world feels like the real world, right? And our real world is sensed by our five sense organs, like seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, right? So all these five senses define our experience. And when it comes to virtual reality, right now, we have achieved, fooling the eyes and fooling the ears. To some extent, there are R&Ds going on to, produce the smell. And there are tactical feedback mechanisms available, which can even produce the, touch sensing. So we are really getting there. So how do we, add these things to the 3D models that we produce? That is that animation step where we add realistic materials, lighting, sound effects, okay? And then, finally they get to a publishing state where we export it to the game engines. And finally, in the game engines, we export them, bundle them, and upload them to the cloud. Finally, it goes for consumption by the programmer. They can get the content from the cloud and stream it on the device to render. So this is the typical workflow. Now, so this is as we seen in the last slide, this entire process is completely manual. You need to put enough people power there to do all that operations. And we recently had one of our enterprise clientele where they had a portal where the users uploaded thousands and thousands of models, but they were not able to consume them in the device. So we solved this problem by automating this process where whenever the user uploads any 3D content to the cloud, we had a pre-processing API which will distribute the load incoming 3D data to a cluster of nodes which is running something called pipeline ops. Pipeline ops is nothing but it's a Blender, Dockerized Blender running in Kubernetes cluster in each of the node. Blender supports automation via Python, and we automated all the decimation, LOD generation, all those process as a Python script using CLI, Dockerized it, deployed it in Kubernetes. And this automated the process of chewing the incoming model and make it AR friendly or AR ready format, and it will publish it to the cache, and which can readily be consumed by XR applications. So this entire workflow eliminates the need for manual processing. So this is our recent success scenario in one of our client use case. Now coming to the MOS, right? The Metaverse use cases. When we say Metaverse, we need to produce data at a really huge scale. For instance, if you want to bring an experience, we need to replicate this ITC Gardenia, right? And we need to replicate all the roads that surrounds it, or even we need to model the entire Bangalore city itself, right? And we are talking about generating digital twin of the real world, right? The city, the buildings, the furnitures inside the building, the pupils inside it, the garden inside it, right? So the content need to be generated. So see the recent trends in automating this process, eliminating the manual components, right? We had innovation from Apple, which uses the lidar sensor to automate the scanning process to produce the room models, and then we have costly scanners from Leica and Matterport, which can scan the environment and produce 3D models out of it. And Facebook recently published several papers on generating 3D models out of your profile picture. Just a monocular photograph, you just give it, it will generate a photorealistic 3D model out of it. And NVIDIA recently published on a NERF paper, which also automates the process of content generation. And there is a process called photogrammetry. You take a 360-degree video of a photograph, or provide the photographs taken around the product, and this photogrammetry software will convert these photographs into a 3D model. The coffee cup that you see there is a 3D model generated out of just photographs taken from our normal mobile phones. So these are all the automation techniques or the trends that we are seeing in the industry currently. Now going into the space of how AI can assist us in automating this entire content generation process. Now there is a key challenge here. See, looking back, right, the object recognition or the image recognition techniques that we have with AI today, we were able to accomplish that because the images were easily represented as a grid of pixels, and each pixel having 3 values RGB, right? So this structural definition combined with something called ImageNet. ImageNet had millions of photographs which we used to feed it into the ML models to be trained on. Now the same thing need to happen for 3D. So that's where PointNet and VoxelNet are kind of structural definitions for the 3D models, which can leverage machine learning models to use that structure for learning. And there is a ShapeNet open source library which has tens of thousands of 3D models to train our machine learning models from. So this is the structural availability or preparation that we need for creating the machine learning models for the content generation. Then using the models that we just described, using the ShapeNet model, recently, Google, not recently, in 2019, Google published a research paper on, training a model and producing output of a 3D model just from the textual description of the model. Okay, I need I need a chair with 2 armrests. Okay, you give the textual description, the AI is able to, produce a 3D model out of it. And we have a Unity Art Engine, which kind of does the texturing. Texturing is nothing but defining how the surfaces look, what color it has, what is the touch and feel of the texture under light conditions, how it reflects. Is it shiny? Is it metallic? Right? All those definitions we call it as texture. this Unity Art Engine has implemented all AI advancement in imaging techniques into this model, which automates the process of texturing. Then we get into the mass generation of XR content. I pass on to Kuldeep.
Yep. So when what Raju talked about, AI is helping generating the content. Raju talked about table, chair, and stuff. But when we say metaverse, we are talking about really huge thing. I'm recently just talked about university example. If you need to build a virtual university, table chair is just a small thing. You need to build whole building, parks, everything you need to build. So the current way of generating content, even with AI, what Raju just talked about, will not help. We need really very advanced kind of concept where we can generate that level of scanning, just like whole city, Bangalore city. I need to scan. I can't scan with the laser camera or iPhone and stuff. That doesn't work there. Because metaverse, so that's a new definition of metaverse coming, is XR at scale is the metaverse adoption. So that's where all the new things will start. Yeah, Raju.
Yeah. So continuing on the same thing, generating or using AI for the content generation. The first advancement that happened in the recent days is the invention of Archigan. Archigan is a machine learning model which can generate the architectural models without the help of any architect or engineer assisted. The user should be able to feed in their description in form of a sketch or a rough description of the architectural model. Then it will automatically generate such models on the fly. The roads, buildings, all the massive structures will be auto-generated by the AI, and even if within the structures, the room inner contents, right? If I have a say 20 by 30 hall, and it has to be occupied with tables, chairs, and stuff like that. Those can also be auto-generated without assistance of engineers. So these are all the recent advancements that are happening in the AI. And coming to the when we want to implement such an architecture that I want to build a system where it makes use of the AI to generate my XR content, then this is the possible architecture where the user can provide either the hand-drawn sketch of rough sketch of this is what I need, or take a real world photograph. Okay, I snatch a photograph of this table and I say, ask my AI, okay, I need something like this, right? Or provide a textual description like, okay, I need a chair with 2 armrests, right? So this will get feed into GAN-like architecture. Depending upon the scale of the generation, it will be either delegated to edge or cloud processing. It can generate thousands of different designs. The generated designs can then be forwarded to a human or AI reviewer, and then the human or AI can associate a score for the generated content. Okay, is this fit for model editing? Then all those labeled as fit for model editing can further be manually edited for the final processing. So this way we will reduce or we prepare ourselves for the mass generation of the content for XR. So to summarize, what we have seen is that what is XR content, what are all the current challenges, and how are we going to address content generation for scale, which is metaverse. So with that, we conclude our session.